Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brown, the Kitchen Vixen. Welcome to my cozy little kitchen. And today we're going to talk about how garbanzo beans burn calories. Yes, you can burn calories with garbanzo beans. And you can burn calories with any beans because beans are a great source of those very complex carbohydrates as well as fiber. In general, half of the carbohydrate from beans comes from fiber, which makes it that you don't absorb all the carbohydrates and they don't send your blood sugar on a roller coaster as do other processed carbohydrates. So beans are always a good choice. And so for the first segment on garbanzo beans, I'm going to talk about garbanzo bean cookies and how you can burn calories with garbanzo bean cookies. So cookies, burning calories, sounds like a win-win to me. So let's find out how we're going to do that. So first, you need some garbanzo beans. And I've already put them in my food processor. Unfortunately, I had to start my video over again, and they're already in there with the almond butter. But I just want to tell you how you're going to start making them, because you can buy a can of garbanzo beans. I recommend the Eden brand, and they come in a BPA-free lined can, so you don't get the chemical runoff that you get from other canning products. Or you can find beans sometimes in their shelf-stable box, like you find your soy milk or almond milk. And that way, you can open it anytime. It's always safe, and there's none of that lining involved that's maybe hazardous. Or you can make them from scratch, which is what I do. And I do recommend organic beans, but sometimes I'll just pick up some beans at the dollar store. And I mean, you can't beat that. I'll get I think about 7 cups of beans out of this $1 bag of garbanzo beans. So it's a very good deal. And to make them, it is a process. So I've just taken some pictures, which I printed out to show you. I put them in my it's a Dutch oven. It's called a Dufaux. It's from Le Creuset, and it's just another version of a Dutch oven that you can use on the stovetop and put in the oven. So you start out with your beans in about 3 inches of water and bring it to a boil on the stove. And then once they come to a boil, I have the stove set at 250, and I basically cook them overnight in the oven, not stove, in the oven. I cook them overnight for about 5 or 6 hours while I'm sleeping. I do set a timer. I find that that's the perfect amount of time. The beans get tender. They don't burn, as long as I make sure there's enough liquid in there before I go to bed. Again, maybe about 2 or 3 inches before you leave them in the oven overnight. And do set a timer so you don't forget in case you oversleep. And then in the morning I have this nice pot of beans. Most of the water has been absorbed. If I have to, I'll rinse some of the water, rinse the beans and run off some of the water, which is fine. Some people prefer to soak their beans. I've read various studies that you may get more absorption of zinc, but maybe not as much of iron, and beans are a good source of both of those, but they're not the main source in your diet. Honestly, this is why I'm not a true vegetarian, because animal products are the best sources of iron and zinc and the most absorbable sources. So just think about that. And then when I'm done, I store them in my yogurt containers. So that's one place where I get some protein. I eat the Fage brand Greek yogurt, and I use the containers to store my beans, label and date, and put them in the freezer. So just a little information for you about garbanzo beans, and they're so high in fiber, and they're so high in protein, and they're high in antioxidants. And if you can get colorful ones, which I know they're available, the more color, the better, the more antioxidants. But nonetheless, you're going to get lots of protein, lots of fiber from these garbanzo beans. So I put 1.5 cups, which is, like I said, what you get from 1 can, in my food processor. I have a basic KitchenAid food processor, which I love. I'm sorry, Cuisinart, but I love KitchenAid and Cuisinart. And they're both very simple, very high quality. 1 button, off, on, pulse, perfect. That's all you need. And then to that, I added some almond butter, which is more expensive. I like the raw almond butter by Maranatha. This is a great brand. The raw almond butter I find has a better flavor. It is more expensive, but I feel like it's totally worth it. And I'm not a big fan of peanut butter, and I feel like it overpowers the flavor. And if you have friends or family that have nut sensitivities, peanuts do tend to be one of the more popular ones that people are sensitive to or even allergic to. Or if people have nut allergies overall and you want to make these cookies for them, you could certainly use sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds and basically just puree them with some water ahead of time so you get that same consistency of that nut butter. So there's 1/2 cup of almond butter in here, and then I'm going to add another great source of good fiber and plant lignans and omega-3 fats. Now this is a vegetable source of omega-3s. Not the same that you get from your fish, but certainly beneficial just the same. So I've actually combined, I do flax and chia seeds. And I know there's people out there who say, they do chia because it's easier, but I find both seeds are seeds and they have a hard outer shell. And I don't believe that you're going to absorb either one unless you grind them, because I know when I eat chia seeds, sometimes they get stuck in my teeth, and I think, well, that's not going to get broken down in my digestive system. It's not like I have little teeth down there. So let's give it a little help by grinding them first. And I use my coffee grinder. And with the coffee grinder, I'll grind some ahead of time and keep it in the refrigerator to use up in recipes. So I do about 1/4 cup of ground flax and chia seeds combined. And what that does, like I said, it adds omega-3s. We want those omega-3s in our diet to help counterbalance the omega-6s that we already get too much of. Omega-3s promote inflammation, they reduce inflammation, they promote anti-inflammation. They help reduce inflammation, which you think of in your joints, but we also think of with chronic disease. They help to reduce blood clotting, which is a good thing. You don't want your blood to clot too much, maybe if you cut yourself, but if you're at risk for heart attacks or strokes, blood clotting is not always a good thing. Not too much. And then to that, I am adding 1/4 cup of dark brown sugar. I like organic dark brown sugar. It has a nice rich molasses taste, and so it has some of the what we think of as white sugar, but mixed in with the molasses, which is the beneficial part, which is like all the nutrition they strip off when they process sugar cane. Is what's left normally is the molasses. That's the best part, and it's a strong flavor, but I'm going to use some of that as well because I love the nutrition profile of molasses. It adds calcium and selenium, iron. It's a great source of iron, again, for people that are vegetarians. It's really important to get enough iron because, as I said, we don't absorb iron as easily from plant sources, much better from animal sources. So, really pay attention, get lots of sources in your diet. In fact, I've even read a study that said if you tend to rely on plant sources for your iron, you probably need to double what the recommended amount is. So instead of, I think it's 15 milligrams for women, up it to 30 for your iron. Okay, so then we add that, and then we have just a little bit of vanilla because vanilla pulls the flavor when there's chocolate involved. And that, you could do without. It's up to you. Again, I get the organic vanilla. It is pricey, but totally worth it. In the end, when I make these cookies, I find that per serving, they're about 25 cents a serving, 25 cents a cookie, about 99 calories a cookie, but lots of nutrition. Lots of vitamin E. That's a significant source of vitamin E, 7% per cookie. And vitamin E is really important to protect a lot of your cells because all your cells are made from fat. And so the fat in your cells is really susceptible to oxidation and damage. I'm having trouble with my food processor. Okay. Don't know why it doesn't want to click here. And that's the way it goes. But basically we're going to process these in the food processor. Oh my. Course. That's it. It's really tricky. You have to have everything clicked into place. So lesson learned. Food processors have a lot of safety valves basically. So once everything's in place and locked and loaded, we just hit on. And we're just going to puree until we get basically a cookie dough consistency. Now you're probably thinking, where are those chocolate chips? I haven't added those yet. That's because we don't want chocolate mush. We want those still in chunks. So once we're done, we could scrape the edge of the cookie dough, scrape the edge of the Cuisinart, and then we're basically just going to pulse in the chips. Just going to do one quick little pulse, maybe two, just so those chips are combined. And then the fun part is when we take our cookie tray and we get to just splat them on the tray. There's no rhyme or reason. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be super neat about it. You just take some cookie dough on a spoon, and I like to use a little spatula to scrape it off onto the tray. And if your dough is a little bit softer than your normal cookie dough, it's fine. I'm telling you, basically what happens when you put these in the oven, they're just going to dehydrate. So basically it's like you're making the beans from scratch, you're adding moisture, and then you're drying them out again. But that's so you can make these great little recipes. And when all is said and done, I might get about 5 or 6 rows of 4 across, about 20 to 24 cookies, however you spread them out. And they're about an ounce each, and that's how I calculated the nutrition profile as I measured the cookies and put them in my food processor program and found that they're about 99 calories a cookie, 2 grams of fiber, 2.5 grams of protein, 7% of that vitamin E, 20% for manganese, and 9% for magnesium. But manganese and magnesium work very similarly in your body. They help when your body's converting food to energy, they help run the energy process. So if you get those foods in your diet that already contain those nutrients that are going to be used in the energy process, then of course you're giving your body something back. It's like it's going to use magnesium. It's like putting gas in your car knowing you're going to use it. You're always fueled. It's good fuel all along. So once I get them all in the cookie sheet, I'm going to put them in the oven, which obviously I've already done. And obviously I haven't preset my oven because I'm going to be going to work in a second once we're done. But I wanted to show you what these cookies look like because they have a nice crunchy texture, and I like them all like kind of misshapen. I think they're more fun to eat that way. And the chips inside, they're really, to me, they're best when they first come out of the oven. I have a crispy coating, chewy inside, but even the next day, they're very cake-like. They never get hard like other cookies. And you can also reheat them in the oven just to warm them up again. I'm not a big fan of microwaves. I like ovens or toaster ovens or convection ovens. You can also freeze them, and then you can just reheat them in the oven to get that crispiness again. So whenever you freeze something, label, date it, use it within usually a month to 3 months at the most. The cool thing is though, if we were to put these in our oven, we're going to put them in for 25 to 27 minutes. So we set the timer, and this is where that extra calorie burning comes in, because while you're cooking your cookies, you might want to do a little cardio. I just happen to have my bicycle set up on a stand in my kitchen. I have a really small apartment, so I'm going to make good use of my space. So I can actually do some exercising while I'm baking. But actually, I already did my bike path. I went for a nice bike ride on the bike path. I live right on the beach. But if you don't have that luxury, or if the weather's not great, or if you just want to get everything done at once, of course, you got to watch those cookies. You can't go out for a half an hour. Something might happen, God forbid. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm Elizabeth Brown, the Kitchen Vixen, and I'll be back next week for another episode.